concerns me more is sort of practical ways of winning, I suppose. And I'm not entirely sure that the media is the mechanism that we're going to use to do that. It just isn't possible for some of the reasons that have been sketched on this podcast before and just immediately before. The thing is, though, I suppose more fundamentally, that we are still looking in the polls in not a very good way at all. That actually, if Better Together is indeed sort of promoting this kind of sort of negative agenda and spinning all these negative stories and magnifying risks and doubts and uncertainties, which I think they are, then we're not really effectively combating that at the moment. And certainly none of the polls show any particular movement towards independence to the substantial extent that will be required if we're going to win in 2014 and have a serious chance of winning. And so I have sort of anxieties around the combination between sort of blunt critiques, which are important to make about inaccurate statements and arguable disagreements between nationalists and those that favour the union. But I don't think we've yet found that magic formula that convinces the sort of the majority to back independence yet. And I think that's far more fundamentally concerning to me than whether or not the Scotsman gingers up its headlines and pursues a particular framing of the news agenda. Obviously, one has an effect on the other, but I think the more fundamental issue and the only way we're going to win it is if we address the first question. The second question about news coverage may just be an endemic feature of the Scottish news ecology at the moment, and I don't think we can do a great degree about it.
I'd agree with that, Peter.
Well, there's 2 points there, Andrew. Well, three actually. One is the relative importance of coverage in the mainstream media. And I don't think it's wise to downplay that. People look to the mainstream media as a source of information, and the broadsheets in particular and the national broadcaster have a certain authority. The things that they say do matter. But the other points that Andrew touched on were, first of all, the need for the Yes campaign to combat this grinding negativity of Better Together and the anti-independence campaign. And that's interesting because it's a criticism that I've heard a lot, and it's a criticism that I thought was, to a very large extent, quite justified. The Yes campaign, Yes Scotland, were just being too nice. But the speech yesterday, I think it was, Blair Jenkins' speech yesterday contrasting the Yes campaign with the No campaign. To me, I saw a certain, he seemed to have a wee bit of fire in his belly on that one. There was something more combative about that. And I quite liked the tone of that, and I hope we see more of it. The other thing that Andrew mentioned was polls. And, a fair bit to say on that. Andrew was talking about the polls and how they show the anti-independence campaign ahead. I'm a little wary of the shallow analysis that simply takes the headline figures. I would rather look at it in terms of the quality of the vote either way. And if we take it roughly, in rough figures, we have 35% yes, something like 55% no, and something like 10% don't know. When we look at that 35% is solid. The yes vote is solid. It just is not moving. It's not going to go away. If we look at the no vote, on the other hand, and we look at it in the light of other polling, for instance, which tells us about the extent to which people want more powers for Holyrood, then we can see that that vote is actually very, very weak, because at least half of that vote, by my reckoning, is people who have already rejected the status quo. And we must remember that the status quo is what Better Together stands for. The status quo, at best, is what a no vote means. And that is why they're now desperately trying to talk about devo this and devo that. But that devolution has already been rejected. We have to remember that they have already rejected devolution, and a large number of people who are currently showing on the no side are people who have already rejected the status quo, and that is the vote that is liable to switch. That is the vote that is vulnerable.
Andrew, you're a big psephological person, so what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are points that Peter makes that are important. I think about that, and I think I wrote something last week about the potential perils, the continuing perils of Devo something, if Better Together produces something which looks tolerably convincing to sufficient percentages of the Scottish people to make that perhaps mobile middle, that undecided middle that might be persuadable towards independence. If they manage to capture that, then we're absolutely doomed. I think, though, it's not clear to me necessarily that we can say, on the basis of the evidence that we've got at the moment, that the yes vote is solid but the no vote is soft. I think there are arguments that one can make about that, and Peter rehearses several of them about devolution, about frustration with the status quo, about the political situation which might be quite different in 2014 coming up to the poll when it really matters, as opposed to now when people, I think, haven't entirely focused their mind on it. But if you look at the most recent TNS BMRB polls, actually we're talking about 30-odd% in favour of independence in those polls, not around sort of 35. So there is a measure of movability which might simply be your usual deviation, or it might sort of denote actually the extent to which the yes campaign, though absolutely having a fundamental core to it, just like the no campaign will have a fundamental core, may also be susceptible to these sorts of movements, particularly if Better Together unleash an effective scorched earth campaign which puts the fear of God into everybody, which is actually looks quite likely to happen. Yeah, so I think the polls are difficult to read at the moment because we're not in the immediate situation where people are thinking, what will I do? Will I vote yes? Will I vote no? But I think on balance it would be important for us not to underestimate the challenge before us still, and the lack of much evidence that we're making significant progress at this stage in terms of convincing Scots, and that has to be a worry if we want to win in 2014.
Exactly. We do have to win. We'll just come to one last little point, because one of the advantages of being a podcast is that we get to cover stuff that the mainstream media won't cover. And they have kind of picked up on this National Collective story. But one of the things they haven't really discussed is the difference between how the two people who are being affected by this, or the two groups of people, well, one person and a group of people are being affected by this, the different ways in which they have reacted. For example, the National Collective's gone very quiet. It's completely understandable, although there's been a statement and they say they'll be back very soon. Whereas the Rev Stu from Wings Over Scotland seems to be taking a more sort of bring it on attitude. I don't know if either of you sort of noticed what was going on there, if you had any thoughts about that.
It is quite a distinction between the two reactions, and if anything, it's the reaction of National Collective, which is slightly surprising, although they perhaps feel more threatened by the threatened legal action. They perhaps feel more vulnerable. I'll be perfectly honest, I don't see legal action actually going anywhere. And I suspect that Wings Over Scotland pretty much saw it that way as well, and decided just to make a stand. Yeah, it's interesting that they've taken different approaches. And one thing, of course, is that this allows us to do is see how it plays out in both cases.
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's no reason legally why National Collective is shut. I mean, they can't sort of on the threat of a lawyer's letter close down a website. That's not how it works. So that's obviously a choice, and a choice from their perspective. I mean, as I said before, have a certain legalistic attitude towards these things, and I'm pretty sure if I got a lawyer's letter on the basis of a statement that I've made that I might find difficult to prove, which is the standard, it's a complete defense to defamation if you can prove the truth of the claims, but you have to prove it, and the burden is in law on you. So I think if I got one, I'd have the fear of God put up me, to be honest. Though I think Peter's point may be correct as well, that actually legal proceedings are frequently perilous reputationally for the person trying to vindicate their reputation as they see it, and the person who is accused of defamation. Very costly for both sides. I hope it doesn't come to legal proceedings, not least because libel proceedings are potentially ruinous, and I think that wouldn't be good for anybody, and wouldn't really strike the right balance between defense of reputation on one hand and the discussion of things which are already in the public sphere, are already part of reportage from more widely circulating media organisations as it stands. That seems maybe legally doable, and it is legally doable to sue one person, even a minor person that defames you, and to ignore the major person that you think has defamed you. But I don't think that really is terrifically fair or sensible.
No, just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting one or the other was correct. We are a national collective, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a response. I personally, I think I would be much more. I wouldn't have done what Wings Over Scotland has, but that's because I've been haunted by my legalistic education.
So I think that's time to finish for this week. Speak to you again next week, Andrew.
Yes, see you next weekend, Michael.
Okay, and Peter, hope you enjoyed coming on.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Michael, and you, Andrew.
And,
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back during the week with the Scottish Independence podcast, I think. And for
do you have any exclusive revelations about who the mysterious guest might be this Wednesday?
No, I like to keep it secret. And for all that, we'll be back next Sunday as well. So we'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Bye.
This storm is coming like a ghost now. All the clubs are being closed down. This place is coming like a ghost town. Bands won't play no more. Too much fighting on the dance floor.
Oh, damn it. I nearly said... I
Seamless, Michael, seamless.